truth. All of it. Every single thing. All boils down to the truth. We all want truth. The truth will set you free. All right, welcome to the program, ladies and gentlemen. This is Press for Truth Live. I'm your host, Dan Dix. Today is February the 2nd, 2016, and we are now on day 32 of the ongoing situation that's been going on in Oregon, the standoff at the Wildlife Refuge. Now, we're going to be covering this extensively today, and a little later, joining us on the line is going to be Matthew Short to help us analyze the situation. He just spoke with 4 of the remaining militiamen who are in there just last night. But before we get to that, I first want to analyze a little bit of what I would say is probably the most controversial piece of evidence to come out from this case so far, and that would be the video that was released by the FBI showing the death of Lavoy Finicum. Now, this has raised a great deal of controversy. There are contradictions now versus what the family is saying, what some eyewitnesses are saying, some of the people involved in the truck, versus what we are seeing on the video. So let's just take a little bit of a look here at what are we seeing, and we're going to analyze this. So this is the moment when the truck is first pulled over, and I think when you see that here's where they have their guns drawn, and how convenient that this plane, low-flying plane, is often out of range. They say this is the unedited version, but as you can see, there are obvious cuts here. But it seems to be a pretty crummy video, first of all. But let's just get to the point where we see that they have their hands sticking out of the truck. And I think that's an important point to make. We see both hands sticking out of the vehicle. And it's a little later on down the road where all of a sudden we see the car take off. Now, there's been reports of gunshot being fired and Lavoy Finicum having to essentially flee for his life. But it's quite convenient that there is currently no audio involved whatsoever with this clip. Now, as he heads up the road, we can see that the roadblock that was set up is quite a ways up the road, probably at least a mile. And here, Finicum, now, right here, you can see as soon as he's in sight of the roadblock, he has his brakes on. He has absolutely no choice at this point. Because of the nature of this roadblock, they have given him no choice but to either injure somebody or to pull off to the side, and that's precisely what he does. He tries his best to pull off to the side. Here's where the officer pops out from the behind his cover and puts himself in danger, and Lavoy, it appears, tries to swerve again, and he's stuck in the snow. Now, here's where things get interesting, ladies and gentlemen. Lavoy exits the vehicle. His arms are raised in the air. He allegedly goes to his pocket trying to grab a gun. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I, having researched this and looking into the character of Robert Lavoy Finicum, who he was as a man, he was a very caring, loving individual. He was the father of 11 children. He was the foster parent of over 50 kids. And it is believed that he left the truck in order to protect the occupants who were inside. Now, the police are suggesting that he reached down into his pocket to grab a 9mm pistol. However, others are saying that he was unarmed, that they left their guns back at the refuge. Now, we've recently seen a post, I'm going to quickly pull this up here, from a family member, Deborah Davis, on Facebook here, who recently stated the following. Well, Lavoy's body is home now. I'm absolutely sickened. Lavoy was shot 9 times. There will be no open casket. The FBI shot him in the face. Right after it happened, I put out a call for the serial number on the 9mm. The FBI claims he had it in his pocket. The Pacific Patriots Network just sent me an email. The 9mm came back stolen 2 years ago. The FBI planted the gun on him. Serial number 54119868. So this is a family member suggesting that the FBI planted this gun on him. Now that would suggest that he was not carrying a gun. So let's go back to this video, and again, we'll analyze piece by piece here exactly what took place. Now, I want to show you the most important part that I feel is involving this individual right here. This is a police officer from Oregon, and just watch. Now, what I want to point out to you here is incredibly, incredibly important to understand. A lot of people suggest that this is the gunfire that killed Lavoie, but I am going to suggest today, ladies and gentlemen, that this is not the gunfire that killed Lavoie, because it is my belief that this is not even a gun. If you look closely, it looks to me that this officer tases Lavoie. First of all, what officer in his right mind would fire at an individual when all these agents are over here? Okay, we have Lavoie Finicum in line with agents here, 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 here. We have agents completely in the line of fire. No police officer would ever fire at a subject with all of these police officers and agents directly behind him. Now, if you look at the moment of firing, let's let it play. Lavoie falls down in a being tased manner, and watch his right arm here. This police officer immediately places his hand on his gun. His right hand is on his gun. Let's continue to let it play. His right hand is still on its gun. Let's continue to let it play. He's still holding the gun. He now looks down at the taser. He sets it down in the snow, at which point Lavoie's arm raises stiff and he runs for cover. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to analyze this again a little bit closer. I zoomed in on this. Let's just watch this one more time, and you can see here, Lavoie is standing there. Here comes the officer. He is pointing what I believe to be not a gun, but a taser directly at him. Remember, the other agents are directly in firing line. So here is the taser. Here is the shot. Lavoie falls in the manner of being tased. Now watch the officer after this happens. He immediately places his right hand on his gun. He continues to have his right hand on his gun while he holds the taser out. The reason why you do this is so you can continue to administer electrical shock. He has his hand on his gun. He then, after he drops the taser, he runs for cover. And now that begs the question. Let's go back to the video and see it once more. Let's pull it back a little bit to the point where this officer does that. He puts it down and then he runs for cover because he is in the direct firing line. He is in line of these agents right here. Now, if this is the case, this has incredible implications. We know that this is Oregon's police officer because of his uniform. He's not dressed the same way as the federal agents are. And with a quick Google search, we can tell that these police are indeed armed with tasers. So now, this, of course, is the moment where he runs away to get out of the line of fire. And that would suggest that the execution, the killing, the 9 bullets that riddled Lavoie's body would have had to have come from this direction over here. So that is a point on this video that I don't really think I've heard anyone else talking about because the implications are huge. If the Oregon police managed to tase him, then they had this situation contained. They would have been able to control the situation. If that is the case, then these federal agents indeed murdered him in cold blood if they did have him contained with the taser. And ladies and gentlemen, don't take my word for it. Please watch the footage for yourself. Analyze it for yourself. Now, the question now becomes, what comes of this? What are people like the Bundys going to do or say in response to this? After all, we still have 4 militiamen that are still held up at the wildlife refuge. So Eamon Bundy has recently made a statement, and we're going to go to a clip of Eamon Bundy talking about calling out to the 4 remaining militiamen to ask them to please stand down. Eamon says this was never meant to turn into a shootout. This was never supposed to come down to that. So he begs the remaining militiamen to please leave and go home to your families. Here's the clip of Eamon Bundy asking the militiamen to please go home.
First, I want to address my beloved friend, Lavoy Finicum. Lavoy is one of the greatest men and greatest patriots I have ever seen. His love for this country ran deep through the blood he gave yesterday. And I mourn for him, and I mourn for his family. I'm asking the federal government to allow the people at the refuge to go home without being prosecuted. To those remaining at the refuge, I love you. Let us take this fight from here. Please stand down. Please stand down.
So the call is from Eamon Bundy to please stand down. Do not escalate this into something that it was not supposed to be. This is what Eamon is suggesting. Now, as of recently, Eamon's father, Cliven Bundy, has now just himself gone against the wishes of his son, Eamon, and has issued a statement to the sheriff saying that he wants the militiamen to stand their ground and to stay there. We also have a clip of Cliven Bundy calling for the militiamen, going against the wishes of his son, and now calling for the militiamen to indeed stand their grounds. Here's the clip.
This is coming from Cliven Bundy, Bunkerville, Nevada. A notice to Harney County Sheriff. The notice goes to the sheriff. A copy goes to the governor of Oregon and of the president of the United States. Here's what it says. Dear Sheriff Ward, this is notice that we, the people of Harney County, and we, the people of the citizens of the United States, do give notice that we will retain possession of the Harney County Resource Center, and in parentheses it was used to called Malheur National Wildlife Area. Remove all federal and state police agents out of Harney County. Place Harney County Sheriff Post Guard at the entrance road of Harney County Resource Center. Stop all from entering, exiting for a time. Cliven D. Bundy.
So this situation is clearly not over. A bit of a contradiction in statements coming from the son and the father. And I want to go ahead and bring on our guest today to help us analyze this. Joining us on the line today via Skype, we're going to be speaking with Matthew Short. He's from Come and Take It and Don'tComply.com. So Matt, thanks so much, man, for taking the time to speak with us here today on Press for Truth Live.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me. Are you hearing me okay?
Yeah, you're coming through good. And I want to first start off by getting your input a little bit on the 4 remaining militiamen who are in there right now. We just aired a clip of Eamon Bundy asking them to leave, and then Cliven Bundy asking them to stay. You spoke with some of them just last night. What is the latest? What did they have to say?
We have spoken with the last remaining 4 over the last probably 4 or 5 days. We've had contact with them, and they have rejected any sort of deal because being in contact with the FBI have told them at this point in time they're being arrested. They have gone past the point of no return. They want a pardon for their part in what's going on because they've not done anything violent. They've not done anything morally wrong. And they are also willing to stand their ground on what they believe in, so that they don't have to spend 6 years in prison. They're literally, the guys like Ammon Bundy and the rest of them that have been arrested are facing 6 years in prison now. So a few of them that are left do not want to spend time in a caged concrete and iron cell, and they're willing to stand down to the very last drop.
So what is their plea at this point? Is it to just allow them to walk freely without being arrested? And Matt, if you could tilt your camera up just a little bit, yeah, that's much better. Yeah, what is their plan at this point? Is there hopes, ideally, to walk away without being arrested?
Well, that's exactly it. They've asked the FBI to let them go home with no charges and to walk free. They've even told the FBI they would leave their firearms behind. They would be willing to go home to their families, but at this point in time, the FBI has told them that they're going to be charged with at least the very same conspiracy to keep federal agents from doing or performing their duties. And they have decided that 6 years of prison time is not worth them giving up their position that they have now.
So are they then going to remain as Clive Bundy would suggest and try to stick it out then?
Yeah, as of right now, they have said that they want to find a peaceful resolution, that they have tried to contact the FBI and argue with them and negotiate with them and go back and forth. Very much the way that the entire group has done from the beginning. And nobody wants to attack the redress of grievances. Nobody wants to talk to them about the Constitution or about their rights or about the way the BLM has been burning people's property. Mm-hmm. They only want to talk about how they will cage them and make them slaves. And as far as they are concerned, they do not want to be caged slaves, and they would rather stand their ground where they're at right now.
Yeah, well, the media is really portraying these people as all-out terrorists. Meanwhile, the whole thing is completely, very, very much so patriotic. And as you said, it comes down to land rights issues and the Bureau of Land Management essentially stealing private property. I understand you've had to deal with the BLM yourself in Texas. Tell us a little bit about that.
On the Red River properties, there has been a call from the BLM to steal, I believe, 195,000 square miles along the Red River in Texas and Oklahoma. Now, what BLM is saying in Oklahoma and Texas is that the river changes throughout the year, and it moves back and forth between the floodplain. The floodplain literally encompasses an area on both sides of the river of hundreds of acres per property. So this would include farmers' ranches, their grazing rights, their homes, their fence lines. And approximately a year and a half ago, Don'tComply.com, Come and Take It Texas, amongst the other open carry groups, went up there and supported many of the ranchers. We lined the Red River with Texas flags on the Texas side, and we put out a call saying that, well, if you don't understand where Texas is, all you have to do now is look at where the Texas flags are. And the BLM did not meet us that day. They have actually gone around and tried to enact more legal and court documents, but we have had the Texas governor back us up, Greg Abbott, and say that the BLM needs to go away. They have no rights or purpose in Texas. The very important thing about Texas is when the land rights of Texas were signed over by Santa Ana after the Alamo here in Texas, when Texas was signed over, the rights of the land and the waterways of Texas were given to the people. We are the only state that has a land office here in Texas, where every other state has a land office in Washington, D.C.
Well, now that this land grab is essentially spreading its way across the country and has made its way on over to Oregon, this has gotten people like the Bundys to get involved and to go over there, and this has gotten a lot of people to want to come out in support of this. Now, when you have a lot of people showing up in support, you're going to get people of all kinds. What do you have heard or know about the potential use of provocateurs or undercovers or anybody who may have been in there to try to discredit these patriots or to try to make them look crazy or to completely blow the cover and have them arrested? What do you know about potential undercovers or provocateurs in the group?
This is a really long story. I don't know how much time you have. I'll try and make it as short as I can. But recently, Don'tComply.com was the group that did the fake mass shooting at UT. And we garnered international media over that event, and we were trying to address that gun-free zones are murder zones where people cannot defend themselves. It's a place where you cannot have your rights or protect yourselves. And Pete Santilli was one of the only people involved, along with TalkNetwork.com, Natural News, Mike Adams, in giving us the live updates on the event. When we lost the mainstream media, we lost the whole police department of Austin, Texas, and we performed this fake mass shooting to show that gun-free zones were murder zones if you did not arm yourselves, because the police don't show up till 15 minutes later. Directly after that event, I was still in contact with Pete Santilli. And a lot of people have said that he is, a government fed and this and that. I'm going to tell you right now on your show, I think Pete Santilli is an asshole. And I hope Pete sees this one day, because I will tell him to his face, I think he's an asshole. And I think he knows that too. And I'm sorry, I don't know about your show. I don't know how far I can go with my language, but,
let her all out, bro.
I had contact with Pete from our event directly until he got arrested in Ohio for having a gun in his car. He called me the day he got out of jail. He told me that he discussed with the judge and the prosecuting attorney that he was a radio show host. He carried a firearm for himself, and they released him from jail without a bond. He went out to Oregon. When he went out to Oregon, he was still on the phone with me. He was still doing shows with TalkNetwork.com. He was going out there to do a armed protest, much like Don't Comply and Come and Take It Texas does and has done for the last 2.5 years. We have proved that an armed society is a polite society, and every event that we've had, we have shown that nobody gets hurt, nobody gets arrested, that when the people protest with their arms, that the police and the people who come to attack them have to think twice and then have to come with them with a logic of reason and verbal communication. Mm-hmm. And when they went out there to do that, they were standing out there with Sheriff Mack and other people for their armed conflict. Or I'm sorry, their armed protests for the Hammonds. And after that, these few guys, including the Bundys and Ritzheimer and Cooper and Lavoy Finicum and everybody else, went out to take over the National Wildlife Refuge. I got a call from Pete Santilli that night, and I can show you guys the records if you really want them. I don't want them to be public on certain levels, but there's information in there that Pete Santilli went out there, and when I talked to him on the phone, he told me that these guys decided to take over the refuge, and I don't completely agree with it. They want me here to continue to do footage and put this out for everybody as the documentary guy, and I am not going. Pete told me this. I am not going to go into the buildings with them. I don't feel comfortable with that. I'm going to go get a hotel room, and I'm going to keep doing this. And since then, they have now called Pete Santilli a rat because the federal government has used his videos and his YouTube videos to make a case against these guys, in which they used to arrest them. And we'll get into that if you want to. But that makes any of us, including you, Press for Truth. I've watched you guys for a long time. I know who you are. And it makes you a government informant too, because you do YouTube videos and talk about certain issues, and then they could then take that and use it to prosecute people because of the information you're giving.
Well, people may not realize, but I very well could have been there and facing 6 years myself. I'm a fellow host on TalkNetwork.com. I'm a host along with Pete Santilli, and it was about 2.5 weeks ago or so that I was contacted by Santilli through the producers of TalkNetwork.com, and I was suggesting to them that I might go there because it's only an 8-hour drive away. And Santilli asked me if I have Verizon, because he needed to live stream at that time. I told him, no, I'm a Canadian. I have Rogers. I can't help you with that. And that was the last I heard from him. That was about 2.5 weeks ago. And he no longer spoke with myself or any of the producers from TalkNetwork.com. And now we have, I want to show the audience right now here, this is what the prosecution is saying in regards to not releasing Santilli. Defendant Santilli should be detained as a danger to the community and a flight risk. Santilli is a flight risk because of a lack of stable community ties and his professed unwillingness to abide by an authority that would manage his supervision. Santilli has no ties to the District of Oregon other than coming to engage in criminal activity. Santilli appears to be a resident of Ohio, but most recently listed his address as the Silver Spur Motel, Burns, Oregon. Santilli has also demonstrated an unwillingness to abide by court order mandates. In a comment made by Santilli on YouTube in episode 1074 of the Pete Santilli Show, he said that he had a bunch of registered guns that he did not turn in when he had a restraining order filed against him in California. I have my stuff buried. I'm not going to be at the mercy of the system. There are no combination of conditions that would ensure Santilli's appearance. He should be detained. Now, we also have the order of detention. Here is the actual order of detention for Pete Santilli. And I'm going to scroll down here and show you that they have listed here on the order possession of weapons and mental health issues is stated here in this. Now, Matt, as you said, when it comes to press, I mean, it's important for the independent media to be able to be there and to get this message out there. But I guess there's a fine line there when it comes to publicly broadcasting the intricacies of what's going on there. So how do we balance that line? I mean, when it comes to what Santilli was doing, you know, was he right or wrong in live streaming the protests? I know it's a tough question. It's a tough one. But when it comes to live streaming events, you know, how do we bridge that gap? How do we, you know, where's the line there when it comes to exposing people or not?
Well, you know, the mainstream media was out there the whole time, and I believe some of the videos that are coming out asking people to sign release forms and whatnot has been because there has been groups out there involved in doing documentaries and doing press with them. And when we have done press, whether it was building a ghost gun with the very first ghost gunner from Defense Distributed on the Capitol steps to doing the Alamo Open Carry March, we were the guys that planned that. There was certain press that we ended up signing deals with because they wanted to use our film, and we wanted them to go out there and spread our message of freedom for the way that we were putting it out. So we signed those things with those people, knowing that they would take that and use it the way that they would. On the same aspect, the guys out there in Oregon, they had a real message to give. You know, they were really trying to give the land back to the people. They were trying to invite the Paiute tribe in there to get some of their artifacts out of there. They were trying to really set straight some of the things that BLM had been doing. The BLM had been burning people's farmhouses down. They were killing their cattle. They were really stealing land from people. Now, to tell you the truth, I will tell you right on your show right now, we did not give any support or help to what was going out in Oregon. And I will admit that right now, even though we were paying attention and we had ears on the ground, whether we had people involved or whatnot. We did not send help or support. We've been watching and waiting and watching and waiting what was going on so we could talk to people about what was happening. But I don't know what to say, man. I'm lost in my words with that one.
Well, I mean, maybe you're, correct me if I'm wrong, on the track of making the point that this, you know, if we're going to have a second American Revolution, this isn't the linchpin. This isn't the event that's going to kick it off. You know, this is not the be-all and end-all for changing the system. This is just not potentially that event. You know, is that what you're saying? I mean, you know, there's a time for everything, and maybe that's the question. I mean, people are being backed into a corner. Nobody wants violence. Nobody wants anything to end violently. But you know, at what point do people say enough is enough and take that stand?
You know, at some point in time, that here in America, we really do have to look at the position that the tree of liberty must be refreshed by the blood of tyrants and patriots. And I don't believe that is a bad way to look at things. I really do believe that if people come to steal your land and rape your women and steal your money and become pirates upon your lifestyle when you've done nothing wrong but produce for the community around you, I don't think there's a wrong reason to stand up against that. I think the consensus between most people is that you do not want to go out and inflict the first wound against the enemy, because for the most part in warfare, if you take this into an informational warfare, you do not want somebody to come up against you and you punch them in the face and all of a sudden they have the reason to defend themselves against you. In this instance, really, the public did not see the fact that BLM had been burning people's farms and killing their cattle and burning homes. And then all they see from the mainstream media is that these guys take over a federal building. And that was the way that it was sold to the public. When these guys actually were responding to it, but the way that it has been sold to the public was they were the ones that inflicted the first wound. And now at this point in time, we actually have a cause that I now want to make, part of the Urban Dictionary and call a Oregon ambush. You know, we should make an Oregon ambush Urban Dictionary thing about what happens here when the people in charge lie to you and convince you to go somewhere to make peace with them and then spill your blood, because now that's the point that we're at.
Yeah, I mean, that seems to be where things are at right now. And when it comes down to the question of who fired first, well, obviously the feds fired first. Nobody of these patriots did anything violent or anything of the nature. The only people who did that were, in fact, the feds. They are the only ones who fired anything. We analyzed the Finicum the death footage a little bit earlier in the show. I mean, such a horrific thing to have to get through and to watch. What did you take from that video?
You know, I think that what's really interesting, and I've had a background position to hear what's been going on from day one, like I said earlier. And, you know, just days before this happened, people had been mocking them, had been sending them rubber dongs, and, you know, we've been attacked on the same type of surface there. But what they had been doing is they had actually left the refuge open for the media to come out. They had invited the Indians who had been cast out by the BLM, and they had been taking their artifacts and storing them on shelves for 20 plus years, where they were dry rotting, where before they were in the ground, where they were preserved, they had not preserved them in the correct way. They were losing history because of what was going on. And then these guys went out there. And the other side of it, they accessed the buildings where they had been going through the BLM's registrations and the titles to the lands and everything else, and had found that they had actually been doing things very unlawfully to steal this from the people. The federal government does not have the ability to take land from the people from Article 1, Section 8. They are not allowed to own land unless the state grants them that. Now, we saw the governor of Oregon ask them to go after the people on the refuge, in which just the day before this happened, Ammon Bundy was on the phone with the FBI and asking the FBI, please tell me, negotiator, what your full name and title is, and they wouldn't do it. And the sheriff contacted them to go and have a parley meeting. This goes back hundreds and hundreds of years into warfare. A parley is a white flag where you go and you discuss with somebody how you back down off of your warfare situation, and you come to an agreement. And under parley, they went to meet with these people and they ambushed them. The original post that I put out on Facebook showed that I was only wrong on one thing. I had said that one of the guys was in critical condition and he wasn't. But I had heard that he was shot from the people. It showed that they had been ambushed from people in the trees. They had set up a place where, if you listen to the testimony, they were come up behind and they were stopped by people behind, but there was already a block in front of them and people in the trees to stop them. So there was snipers and people in positions to shoot them down, and they were stopped and shot down, and it wasn't the Waco style situation which people were looking for on the refuge, but they did it on the road.
You know, speaking about what they did on the road and the testimony of, what's her name? Victoria Sharp, I believe was her name. There was conflicting testimony where she said that Finicum was on the ground with his hands up when he was shot. Now, if you watch what I analyzed a little bit earlier, you will see that after the police officer, what appears to have potentially have tased him, and with the other feds then executing him afterwards, well, that would validate what Victoria said with him being on the grounds with his arm in the air when being executed. Now, you mentioned this, going to talk with the police. They were actually on their way to a meeting that night. Hundreds of people were supposed to be at this meeting, and weren't they going to be meeting with the sheriff to essentially, talk about, I suppose to go over with the town and the sheriff all the pros and cons and what they're going to do about this, right? They were on their way to talk to the townspeople and even the sheriff.
Yeah, from what I understand, up until this point, they had not actually just completely taken over the refuge and locked everything down. They did do some, damage, if you would say that. They cut a few fences and let people have some more grazing rights. They allowed the local farms people to come out on the refuge and speak with them. The media had been out there, and there was no reason for the federal government or anybody else to go and raid them at the time, because they had an open border situation where these people could go out and talk with them. They had left the refuge on several other occasions to go and do town hall meetings, and this was the kind of meeting that they were going out to do that day. They had, and if I'm not mistaken, they were going the county over, because the county over sheriff had said that they were backing the constitutional argument from what had happened. And, a lot of people are losing the fact that just a week or two before, the fire marshal had come out and quit his job because he caught two feds going into the local armory and were saying that they were doing something they weren't supposed to. Now, here's the interesting thing. The fire marshal who quit his job Okay, I will tell you this. I rarely say this on any of my interviews or anything. I work in the fire industry. I work in life safety. That's one of the reasons why I am big on the Second Amendment and people protecting themselves, because I work in fire safety and life safety. I build the systems to help these guys do what they do. The fire marshal is the one person in his area who is tasked by law. He's called the AHJ. He's called the authority having jurisdiction, the AHJ in my business. His jurisdiction and his authority having jurisdiction is to keep people safe. And this guy quit his job in the middle of this, giving credence to what the Bundys and what the guys were doing out at the wildlife refuge, because the feds were doing underhanded crap and they were doing things wrong, and they were trying to create a false flag scenario to take against these men here, right? So this guy comes out and he quits his job. He's been there for 20 years and he's been the main person involved in being the AHJ, authority having jurisdiction over the life safety of his community. He quits his job because these guys are sneaking around and lying and doing the wrong things. This was a huge clue that everybody should have got a hold of, and they didn't.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is huge, Matt, and this, begs the question: what are they doing this? what are they doing this for? I mean, that's big. That's big. I mean, just elaborate on that. I mean, yeah, it should be obvious that this is a setup now.
Well, I think it's really important that people see that the last show that Pete Santilli did before he was arrested that day, that morning he got on, and the first part of his show talks about how he had contacted the local judge and was wanting to go down there with a court reporter. If you know what a court reporter is, they do certain typing that's different than other people. They record exactly what's said. He wanted to go down there and talk to them, and they refused his interview, even though they invited everybody who was local to do that. Pete Santilli, whether he was at a hotel or whatever, he had set up local residents, and it's ridiculous. He set up a ridiculous local residence so he could actually go and talk to the judge, okay? So they refused him that, and the judge, which Pete Santilli was going to go after him for, has a brother involved with the BLM. The judge had set up the sheriff, who used to be BLM, as the sheriff. He wasn't voted as sheriff. In America, in our counties, we're supposed to be voting for our sheriff to be our representative as our law enforcement against the federal government and for our local protection and our safety. So when he went after them, he brought himself into what the guys were doing out at the refuge. And as much as they say that they were watching what he did and took him as a rat, they took his YouTube videos and used that for that purpose. Now, what happened after that was these people who were involved with the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, or the feds, then used their position to help the feds take these guys out in an Oregon ambush and take them out of their position. Because what they were doing is they were trying to set up a common court and a common law grand jury to take these people out of their positions because they had not been voted upon for their positions to be authorities in that area. Mm-hmm. And the one guy who did have the authority and the jurisdiction had given up his post because he saw what the feds had been doing. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of shenanigans going on here. Even though the Patriot side had taken federal land, the feds evidently are going to protect their private property like the militia wants to and the farmers want to. But then you have these people who are in position to protect their position of power in their communities against these people who are challenging them.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like the feds are obviously going to great lengths, and the question is, what do they fear? What is it that they're so afraid of these patriots accomplishing? What in your opinion is what the government, the feds, this whole New World Order system is so afraid of happening from these militiamen? Could this set a precedent? What are they worried about?
In my personal opinion, and I'm going to give my personal opinion here. This is not anybody else's opinion. I think what these people are doing is they are controllers. They are people who have found themselves wearing a black dress in the middle of a courtroom, or they found themselves in a position of power with guns or with these other things. And they say that the people should not have that. But in America, we have the right to redress our grievances, to have the ability to protect ourselves, the Second Amendment, so on and so forth, right? And we all argue that constantly. But what these guys were doing, they were attacking their power of authority. And what these guys are doing, and they might not even understand it, they are enacting Agenda 21. They are stealing the property from the people. They want everybody to be, concealed into a local government area where they're controlled by several others, so that the land can go back to nature. But in all actuality, this is like a communistic or socialistic government where then the people who control those areas, like the BLM, can resell them for resources. They can resell them for the land. They can resell them without actually having to pay these people for their land rights. The BLM is an offshore organization. They do not have any power underneath the government. The government is not supposed to own land. They are a part of the corporation that is Washington, D.C., and they are trying to convince people by contract, because American law is contractual law, that they have to give up their land because these people have power. They only have power as long as we, the people, give them power. Mm-hmm. And this was the thing that the Bundys and everybody else was challenging them on. Now, did they do it right? I'm not so sure that they did it right. That's why we hadn't sent support, but we've been paying attention very closely. We've been involved with it. We have all the support in the world. We are supporting ourselves here in Texas. We are against the BLM here in Texas. We have pushed them out so far, and we can't necessarily send support halfway across the country for that. What is going on is they are enacting Agenda 21 to steal the land and the resources from the American people for the purpose of the elites and the New World Order, if that's the way that you want to put it, for a New World government and things that people are building. But what we want to retain is the rights of the people and our inalienable rights of life, liberty, and our property.
So that's very, very well said, Matt. I mean, I think I'd have to agree. That's what it all comes down to, is this land grab and Agenda 21. But now, where do we go from here? Or I guess the question is, what would you like to see in the coming days or weeks come out of this? What are your hopes to see in the next few days or weeks? It's a tough one.
Yeah, that's a really big question, because personally we're involved with some things that are going to early in the future that are going to involve the militia and our inalienable rights. Don'tComply.com has been on the forefront and the front line of the Second Amendment. We have changed the laws and changed a lot of things. We have Bloomberg, Moms Demand Action, the White House, and everybody else with tens of $millions against us, and we have succeeded for the last 2.5 years. As far as what's going out in Burns, Oregon, there is a lot of people going out there and supporting them. I think that it is disgusting that they used an Oregon ambush. Again, let's go and put that in the Urban Dictionary as an Oregon ambush now. Mm-hmm. We really need to put that out there. When somebody lies to you and forces you out there to have a parlay so they can ambush you from the woods, that's an Oregon ambush now. And they killed Lavoy Finnegan for that, as far as I'm concerned. What I hope to see from this is that people really awaken to what the federal government's doing and trying to steal land from people. Mm-hmm. And that they're trying to convince people to contractualize themselves out of fear to give up to a certain group of people the power of what they've had to produce cattle and goods as far as wheat and corn and everything else that goes in and feeds people, to the few who are going to lock that land out and not allow it to be used to help humanity. What we're seeing is we're seeing an old world style system. This is not the New World Order. This is the old world order, where the few obtain the rights of the many and create us as being serfs. And that is not what I want to see. I want to see American people standing up for their rights and being individuals and allowing for themselves to have property and produce in a system that helps everyone without other people coming in and taxing and stealing from them.
You know, Matt, I think a lot of people want precisely the same thing that you want. A lot of people, this resonates with them right now. So to all the viewers here who are watching and they're resonating with what you're saying and they want to get involved, they want to learn more from you guys, they maybe want to get involved with you, where do people go? You know, what are the links? What are the sites? How can people get involved with your cause?
You know, we're a bunch of loose guys in Texas. We've been having fun for the last couple of years with the open carry movement. Don'tComply.com, Come and Take It Texas, or Come and Take It America. We have been the guys behind the open carry movement in Texas. We have been the guys behind much of the gun confiscation or the anti-movement for it in the South. We have made Rolling Stone news. We have made every aspect of the news, whether it was us at the Alamo and doing the open carry or doing the Ghost Gunner with the very first 0001 machine on the Capitol steps. We have so many more things up our sleeves. We are fighting for freedom. We are fighting against these things. We're doing it in our own way. You know, go to don'tcomply.com. You can also find our links on talknetwork.com with the Don't Comply show. We are a bunch of jokesters. We love to troll the system. We love to laugh when people troll us. We troll them back. And go to don'tcomply.com. You can find all of our links. And, you know, we support all the activists like Press for Truth, Adam Kokesh, talknetwork.com, Luke Rudowski. We have so many friends out there that we're involved with. And I hope you guys go and check all those different avenues out. And, you know, that's about all I have to say with that.
Well, you guys have been, you know, absolutely killing it. And that's why, you know, I had you on the show. Any final thoughts on, you know, what people need to leave here today thinking about in this whole Oregon standoff situation?
Yeah, I do. I think that every single one of you out there should know that you're an individual. You were born with talents, and don't bury your talents. Don't push them away. Don't let anybody ever tell you that you're not something, because you are something. You were born differently from everybody else. Your situations are different than anybody else, and the things that you go through gives you an idea of what life is more than anybody else. And don't become a socialist. Don't become a communist. Be an individual and be somebody who wants to be a part of a republic, who wants to be a part of a renaissance of our nation, our land, and the things that we're doing politically. Go and be a part of people who want to make a change, who are against those who want to control others. Freedom is being an individual and respecting the rights of others.
Well said, Matt. Well, very well said. I think it comes down to that classic mantra, be the change that you wish to see in the world, and that all starts with you. So, Matthew Short, man, thank you very much for joining us here today.
Hey, thanks, Dan. I appreciate you having me on.
Take care. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was Matthew Short of Don'tComply.com, and I would have to agree with him. You know, you can't even think about trying to fix the world or help other people unless you help yourself. So, you know, that's really what it all comes down to, essentially. So let's try to maybe work on ourselves before we try to fix others. But that brings us to the end of this show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in. I hope we managed to cover all aspects of this. This is a very huge topic. There's so many things going on with this, folks. But we'll continue to stay up on this as this continues to develop throughout the week. But that is all for our show for this broadcast. I want to thank you guys once again for tuning in. I hope to see you right back here on this same channel, this same time next week. Keep fighting the good fight, my friends.